You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do. Hello, people-centric leaders. We are back today, and we have a dream team. We have Stephanie Anderson, we have Diana Realty, and we have myself, Bethany Taff, on the podcast today. So you should feel like this is a treat, because it is. It always is a treat when the three of us get together and get to have a podcast conversation. And then before we get on the podcast, we usually talk about something unrelated to the topic that we're about to discuss. And that is what happened today, but it's a good warm up for us. So here we are. Welcome to today's episode, team.
I really do enjoy this collective. This is a good grouping.
We
Not
love
that we
everyone else on our
devalue.
team too, but
Yeah.
the three of us, there's not a lot of intersection sometimes where the three of us get to do something together, because we're usually doing lots of other stuff. And so this is a treat for the three of us to get to do it together.
Yeah. I think we have secret dreams of starting a podcast about other topics. I don't know what it would be called or what it would be about.
Listen, if we just recorded random stuff that we all talk about, people would listen, because there is always something good that comes out of it. We're a collectively brilliant group.
Oh,
Agreed.
man.
It's kind of like, you know how they're, I actually don't listen, but you know how the Office ladies have their podcast?
Yeah.
What's it
Yeah.
called?
Yeah. It's called The Office Ladies.
Is that what it's called? Okay.
Yeah. And they
It's like
recap The
I
Office.
feel like ours would be like that.
Where we just
Except for real life.
recap work, or like what will we be doing? I also love how Bethany was like, I have no idea what that podcast is actually about, but we could do that.
I've never listened to it, but it'd probably be like that if I just had to guess. I don't know.
That's definitely our strongest opener yet. Like, if you're with us, you're one of us.
You're with us. Thanks for still being here. All right. Well, the actual topic for today that we were discussing is this idea of like a stated culture versus the lived culture within an organization. So imagine with me, if you will, and some of you don't have to imagine, this might be your real life. If you have started working for an organization recently, or maybe you have been working for a organization company for a while, and before you started, you saw their mission, vision, values, you looked at their website, it was very inspiring. They are changing the world. They had lots of cool stories about all the things that they're doing or making or changing or whatever. And maybe you knew people within the organization, or you knew of people and they were really inspiring, and you thought, those are the kind of people I want to be around. This is the kind of work that I want to do. Or I know this is a really well-known company. I want to be there. That would be so amazing. And then as time went on, as you got to know people, as you started doing the work, as you got inside of the organization, you looked around and you saw some misses and you became disappointed in some things. Maybe not everything, but you saw some big glaring holes. You saw some gaps and you thought, oh, this is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. This is not what I thought I was signing up for, based on my preconceived notion or idea about what this organization is doing. And so then what do you do with that? Does that mean you walk out, you quit this, quit wherever you're at? Does this mean you have to address something? Does this mean that you need to start telling everybody that these people are not who they say they are? What do you do? And I think that a lot of people can probably relate to stories like this where they started somewhere and they were like quickly disappointed in what they found, right? Right? I've heard people talk about this, have shared stories about this. I think you see it on social media a lot. We'll share some examples that we've seen of maybe some large brands that you know of, but then also, what does that look like with some of the clients that we work with as well, and stories of people that we've worked with. So that's kind of that's our topic for today. And so we want to just dive in. So why don't we just start there of what do you do if you're in this situation? If you are this person who is now sitting in a seat on a bus and you don't like the bus anymore. It's like the bus looks more sad on the inside than it did on the outside. It was shiny and pretty on the outside, and on the inside it smells a little bit.
I was going to ask Stephanie what she did when she joined our team.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. No, okay,
What
because
did you do when
what
you
did I
got on
do?
the bus and it was smelly?
No, listen, my experience was like in some ways the opposite of like I remember I was telling them this before the podcast. I remember joining our team and like hearing our mission, vision, values. And in my mind, because I have some work trauma, I was like, these are too good to be true. And then I started working with you all, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like working with like 10 Mr. Rogers. And I guess they're all just like a little more enlightened than I am. They're a little more evolved as a human being than I am because like people are doing and saying things that like kind of make me mad or annoy me. And they're all just like, togetherness and harmony and we forgive and like harmony is low for me on the Strengths Finder assessment if you've ever taken that. And so I remember actually having like a little bit of the opposite moment when I started where it's like, whoa, they were serious about this stuff. And I don't know if I was prepared for it. And but then I will say it was funny. There was some moment, and I don't remember what exactly it was now, but I remember something happened one day and like one of you I saw be just like a very real human about it. And it wasn't like perfectly aligned with all of our values or our culture. And I was like, aha, they are real human beings here. And Mr. Rogers was a real human being, right? But I think, that's who he played on television. But it was almost, and then for me, like a good moment. If it didn't make me then like be like, well, all of our values are fake and they've been faking it this whole time. It was actually just affirmation that, like, you know what? I think in a really, really healthy culture, you should feel those values most of the time. And again, I don't remember the exact solution, but I've seen it happen again with our team. And I know I've been that person some days on our team where it's like, wow, I just had a really human reaction to this. Or I maybe didn't respond in the closest alignment to our values. I just had a very human response to this. But what I appreciate about our team is that it does feel like we resolve it with the values. So like whatever's happened, even if maybe the action, reaction, response, whatever wasn't totally values aligned, then we look at our values to tell us, like, how do we get back then to our true north?
And I love that example because it kind of runs the gamut of like what can happen to people in this scenario, right? And I love that in that example, you didn't immediately look at the team and be like, oh, they're a bunch of liars and these values are fake and none of this is real and they all suck, right? It was like, oh, they're human and made a human mistake, thankfully, right? Like, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then let's fix the mistake by going back to our values and saying, like, what do we do? So I love that example because it's all of the scenarios into one, and I just think it's great.
Well, thanks. I will also say I've had the other moment, more like Bethany was describing too, is like, without pointing fingers at things, I spent the first decade of my career in nonprofit. And man, you talk about like idealized values, you'll never find more than in a nonprofit. And I can remember one specific organization that I worked at that after I was there, like 6-ish months, it was this like, oh, moment. Like, yeah, you guys really like preach on this and hit this hard, and it's what you all talk about publicly and all of this, but that does not extend to this team because when something got hard, all of a sudden it was like those values didn't exist. And sometimes people were treated really poorly, or there were very human responses and reactions, and then there was no pulling it back around. It became it became divisive in the organization. And yeah, for me, like there was just a certain point where it's like, wow, I can't keep working here because it's starting to feel like it's bumping up against some of my like values of like, I don't want to work somewhere that looks beautiful on the outside and is also asking people for money because it's a nonprofit and then is really kind of ugly on the inside. So like that, I left that job, right? So I've had the other side too, where it was like, wow, this was not what I hoped it was going to be, which honestly, like I can think back to myself in that moment, like it was very heartbreaking. It's like I thought I'd signed up for this one thing that was gonna, change the world. And then it was like, oh, no, but it's just gonna give me anxiety. Like it's not gonna be that.
I think to your point and Bethany's point, like that happens a lot to people. I think we get into an organization and look at that mission, look at those visions, or look at that vision, look at those values, and really connect with those, and then see all of the rust around those. And then don't take the next step of like, okay, can we solve this? Can we use our values to solve this? Can we discuss, is it safe to discuss this? Like if you had gone to your employer and been like, hey, I think our mission and vision is this, and we're kind of doing this, which goes outside of how I understand it. Can you help bring me back? Like, would that have even been a safe conversation? And I think a lot of times the answer is no. So I was curious about what do you do with that?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question because I do think sometimes the answer is no. If I can think back to my situation, I think the answer would have been no. And it probably would have gotten pointed back at me. I don't think you really understand what we're trying to do here. And I was like, you are correct. So I should go. Um,
Sure.
but I sometimes think, if I think of some of our clients where maybe we have heard feedback from people who maybe have started on those teams and then come to us and said, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I think there are leaders who would be willing to have that conversation, but I think how you approach that conversation with your leader really, really matters. And this ties a little bit back to an episode we just did recently where we talked about employee surveys and like,
Mm.
should you be totally honest on an employee survey and where is that the right place for feedback about your boss? So I think how you approach your leader, like I don't know, don't go to their office and be like, all of this is hooey and none of you live this out and it's actually the opposite. But I would love to hear both of your viewpoints on this too. Like, how do you approach that in the right way to know, like, is this a place that I can still exist in, and maybe I can help be a part of that positive change, or how would I know maybe it's not, and it's not going to be the space for me to make the impact that I wanted to make.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe zoomed out a little bit, like not the specific conversations, but I do think it matters a lot how organizations respond to these. So I think the punchline, right, is that no organization is going to be perfect. And so if you get into a company and you are disappointed with what you see, like okay, well, that's probably going to happen everywhere that you go. And so that's probably not that doesn't mean you need to just like jet and get out of there right away. Unless there's just like, obviously, unless you are in danger or there's something that's like really illegal happening, right? Like, obviously, I'm not talking about that. But if it's just like, hey, the work environment it's not exactly what I thought. It's not the culture that I thought. Okay, well, are you having the right conversations or how is the organization responding to it? Because things happen, misses happen, people are not perfect, organizations are not perfect. And so I mean, I think some of the examples that we were kind of talking about before that sort of gave us the inspiration for this topic. Things like, like Amazon, right? So that what they say is that they strive to be the Earth's best employer. That was the example. And then what happened is that OSHA found Amazon exposed to like warehouse workers at 6 locations, it says, to high risk of low back injuries and other musculoskeletal disorders. What this source doesn't actually tell us is like, what did Amazon, how did they respond to it? So that's what we're missing, right? Ideally, hopefully, they responded positively to that and said, yes, that is not exactly who we want to be. And we want to go and we want to make this better. And we're going to make sure that our workers are supported and have the health care that they need and that we're not putting them at risk for injury, if at all possible. What do we need to do to make those changes? Hopefully that was the outcome. I don't actually know. Right. And there are some other incidents here for other organizations, right? So not just to call out Amazon in this situation, but I think that like first of all, like give your leaders grace. Be willing to like go and just be curious. I think that if you want to have conversations with your leaders, is always come with questions instead of accusations when possible, and give a lot of grace to say, there's probably something I don't know. We always say good communication only happens when you know that you might be wrong. And so assume that you don't have all of the information. That's what I would do. And be open to having those conversations whenever you can, and see how they respond. And I think that if you can be open to understanding that mistakes happen, misses happen, not everything's going to be perfect, and you can ask some questions and see how they respond. And if your organization is willing to say, yes, that is not ideal, that's not exactly what we're shooting for, here's what we're doing, or hey, thanks for bringing this to light. Can you help us? And are you willing to be able to say, absolutely, let me get involved. What can I do to help? Or here's what I can do to help support our culture and continue to make it be the kind of culture we want it to be.
Yeah. And before we jumped into the podcast, I was kind of saying that core values, I've never seen a company have like negative core values. They're always these big, huge words that have a lot of baggage tied to them. And each word means something a little different to everyone. And so I think it's important to stop and pause and reflect about what those core values mean to you and how others might perceive those core values. I think about ours of communication, right? The way I communicate is different than the way Stephanie and Bethany communicate. And I could easily be sending a bunch of emails and making planner boards and being like, well, I've communicated it. And Stephanie and Bethany could come to me and be like, you're not living in our value. You're not communicating. You're shoving information down my throat, which is not the same as communicating. And I think, I would have to take that feedback and be like, oh my gosh, you're right. That's not how I took that value. That's not how I registered that value, but I see how you're applying it. And let me work to do better, because the other value that I need to incorporate here is team and impact and truth. Like, let's put all those together. So I think it's important to realize that values are subjective, sort of. Like, that's maybe the wrong word, but they're kind of subjective. And they're not always easy to just pinpoint.
Yeah, and sometimes we talk about values as being like they can sometimes be a little aspirational, and that's totally okay, because we want this to be this is something that's informing and helping our culture become what we want it to be, but that doesn't mean we're always there today. So sometimes for organizations, when we set values with them in our strategic planning process, we're not always going to say like, let's just say, what are our lived values? And if we were like realistic about what our actual values are day to day, most organizations would be very bad. Like the values would be very bad because people are not perfect. People are not always respectful of each other. People are not always prioritizing teamwork. People are, those are not always what people's go-tos are. So we want them to be a little bit aspirational because we're trying to help create a culture that may not currently exist. So we're like working towards these things, right? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't set those or we shouldn't say those things or whatever. It just means that we need to like at keep them top of mind and be having conversations about them and use them to help figure out the best way to respond, like you were talking about, Stephanie, I think at the beginning of the podcast. But I think the reality is, we work with so many organizations. And when we were thinking about this, like, again, it's easy to look at big brands like Amazon or Boeing or Starbucks or whatever and start vilifying, that's the word, right? Vilifying some of those really big brands and what their intentions are or are not. But when we kind of bring it back in and say like, oh, let me think about some of the companies that we work with, maybe locally, maybe not, but maybe organizations that you have or have not heard about, what we can say, we can look at that and say, gosh, we've worked with leaders who have really awesome visions for their organization. They have really high ideals for what they want the culture to be at their organization. And within those same organizations, I bet we could find at least one person who would say, that is not at all how we function. That is a lie. That is not who we are. Okay. Does that mean that that leader's wrong about saying this is the kind of culture that they want or the kind of vision that they have set for that organization? No, it's not wrong, but there might be a clear disconnect from what the frontline staff are experiencing and what that leader hopes to see within that organization. So that means like we have to create some kind of connection point here to make sure that it is a lived reality as much as possible. And so that's a lot of the work that we get to do. What else would you guys add to that?
No, I agree. And I think, just to say this, like when we're talking about values and how they define culture, it's like we really think of values as like what are the rules of the game, right? Like how do we agree to work with one another? How are we going to approach our mission? And so, like you said, Bethany, it's like those should be our guiding principles that tell us, like honestly, like when things are hard, how should we react, or like how would we define success for ourselves as an organization? Are we living by those things? Are we playing the game this way? And so I think it's again like, yeah, the goal probably is not a 100% score because we're all just people at work, but I think the goal is to live as close to those as you can, because you're right, of like the culture is defined by how we're actually doing it, not what the words on the paper are. And that's where I think a lot of like organizations do get the criticisms when we say things like, well, safety is our priority, but then we have all of these different incidents that we can point to. So like I think if you're feeling that, or even if you're seeing that in your organization, you're a leader listening to this and saying like, well, yeah, we preach that, but then this stuff keeps happening. And sometimes we'll hear leaders say, well, I guess it's just I have all the wrong people because nobody wants to live that value. It's like, that's probably not true because they all were a first day employee at some point too, and probably aligned with that. And I don't know anyone who would be just like safety doesn't matter. Like Diane was saying, like companies generally don't have just like evil values. Like we hope people get hurt so we can make more money, right? So what's happening that makes it so easy for that value to get missed or not get lived out? Like, do we have a process problem? Do we have a feedback problem? Do we have an accountability problem, right? Like, what are our blind spots in our organization. And so maybe there's something about our culture that maybe we don't experience in this team. And so we have a blind spot that it does happen in a different part of the organization or with a different group of people on the team. And I think just being open enough to be like, I don't know. I want to say it's like, yeah, you shouldn't like it when you find it, right? But also saying like, okay, unless it is something that really is like illegal or hurting people or violates my personal values, I just won't do that. Then I think it's saying like, okay, let's be honest enough that we don't like this, but also smart enough that we'll figure out how to fix it and not just be like, well, that's just our industry. People just act that way here. We just can't live out that value because this is just who we are, what our industry is, or turning it the other way and just saying, well, we've just got all the wrong people. It's like, no, like what's creating that on your team and being honest about it if you're really going to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. I think there's a lot of what you don't want to see is an organization who has like this self-protection mentality and I think sometimes that just happens and that can happen from the very lowest level within the organization all the way to the top where I think you see some of these types of examples of like if there's multiple safety incidents and it's misaligned with that organization's value of like safety as a foundation, then something has been missed, right? Like we have not actually prioritized it, but where did that begin, right? Did that begin with like, because we said this is our standard, and so people are going to be, you know, punished if there is some kind of safety incident, then people might start hiding those issues, right? Like where they're missing on things and then whatever it is, so it's being able to look at that and say like, oh, maybe as a leader are we doing something that's causing there to be inconsistencies further down the line instead of just pointing our fingers at employees for those incidents or just the humility as an organization and as a leader to say, like, I am less concerned with protecting myself and my position within this organization at whatever level, top or bottom, that I'm willing to say, hey, there is a problem and let's fix it. And I'm willing to put that out there. But to your point, Stephanie, of like there could be other things that are preventing that. So is there low psychological safety within that organization that's preventing people from doing some of those things? Anyways, there's a lot that we could go and unpack with like really specific examples on this. But I think that the punchline for me, I think the biggest takeaway is that, if you are an employee within an organization where you feel disappointed by what you're experiencing versus what you saw on the outside, just I wouldn't jump ship right away. I think the point is knowing that like recognize that every organization is filled with humans, most of them. I think maybe there's more AI and technology now, right? Most are filled with humans, and humans are not perfect. We make mistakes, and so don't jump at the first sign of inconsistency. Be willing to have conversations or watch and wait and give grace for a response, and see how those things are handled on the back end and yeah, and don't keep looking for a perfect organization because I think you will continue to be deeply disappointed wherever you go if that's your mentality. But I think that if you adjust your mindset as you go into an organization, then I think you can be really excited and satisfied and say, "Hey, look what we are doing, in spite of maybe our flaws and how we solve those problems and how we fix things and all of that." What would you guys add? Any other takeaways or thoughts for this topic?
I love how you sum that up. Thank you for that. Just the like, nobody's perfect. If you're perfect, you're not perfect. You know what I mean? You're not perfect.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect, which means no organization is perfect, and the people within those organizations are not perfect. So yeah, I love how you sum that up of just give some grace, be curious, feel like we keep repeating those themes throughout every podcast we do. Give grace, be curious, ask questions. And yeah, that'll take you pretty far.
Okay. Anything else, Stephanie? Would you add anything?
No, I agree with Diane. I think you summed that up well. And I'll just say, I know there might be one or two people who are just like, no, like I can have perfect. There's got to be a perfect company out there. And I feel that in my core too. But I think it is just realizing if you're going to work with people, then you have to be willing to leave space for it to not always go how you expect or how you would prefer things to happen, and that you will be the one sometimes that makes the mistake too.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think this is a good conversation.
Yeah. If you are in this situation though, and you are struggling with it, or you're trying to figure out how to navigate a culture that you feel disappointed by, or you feel concerned about, or anything like that, we're always open to questions and conversation and support if you need it. So you'll find in our outro how to get a hold of us if you just want to talk, or if you just have a question that you want to throw to our team. We're happy to answer your questions. So thanks for listening. It was a joy and pleasure to talk with you both, Stephanie and Diana. Thanks.
Same.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and